Hell with Vince McMahon. I don't need him.
Radiation is a curious thing. No one expects what it would bring. But some-
In your opinion, what makes a great announcer?
You have to understand the psychology of what you're watching. So many announcers get out there and they just call moves, or they try to pop the boys with their inside jokes and just treat it like they're the most entertaining thing out there. And they're not. It's never, ever once been about me. If I ever am referring to I or me, it's 99 times out of 100 my opinion over how detestable this guy is or how courageous this guy is. It's psychological in the sense of I don't want to tell you that guy's doing a snap suplex. I want to tell you why he's doing it. I want to tell you what he's trying to break down, what he's trying to gain from this matchup, what happened last month to get us here. And I always try to go into a broadcast thinking, okay, there's at least one viewer out there who has never seen this product before. They're just watching it because of the name in the main event, or they saw it in a $5 bin somewhere, or their friend dragged them, or they saw a poster somewhere. How do I suck them in? How do I make them understand who these people are, not just as wrestlers, but as characters and personalities, and bring that out to the forefront to where it's not just guy in the black versus the guy in the white. It's an emotional investment. I want to see this character achieve their goal. You have to ebb and flow your voice and your emotion with what's going on in the ring. You got to know when to lay out and let the crowd tell the story, or let the people in the ring tell the story. And you have to know to not talk over your audience. And it's great if you know the 6 different Japanese names for this hold, but unless you're in a position to actually calm down and explain what this is and what this does, it doesn't do anything for anybody. So it's audience first and foremost. Be on a level you're not going to lose anybody or lose as few people as possible, and just try to explain not just the who and the what in the ring, but the why and the how, and that gives people a deeper appreciation and understanding of what's happening. And a great example was Gresham. Gresham's one of my favorite guys to watch now. He just won Super Indy. But his matches, they're so long and they're so intricate, but at the same time, they're so simple. They're like chess matches. Gresham will set you up to fail 2 moves later. And if I'm not sharp enough to catch that, we lose it. And Gresham's told me he loves my announcing. I've told him it's easy with you. It's not me. I'm only as good as who I'm working with. You know, you give me a match with some of those fat guys that are wrestling around here. You know, what do I have to work with? Well, later tonight we got this, you know, but you give me Gresham and I can go for 38 minutes and not have to stop and not have to, you know, put any filler in there. It's there's so much story to tell. And the other thing too is just talent understanding their characters. And if you're a heel, don't just tell me you're a jerk. That's every heel in the locker room. You know, if you're a babyface, or if you wear all black, don't tell me you're dark and mysterious. Just tells me you want to be the Undertaker and you don't really know what your character is, you know? Give me something. What makes you different and stand out from everybody else? What's your background athletically, academically, your upbringing, your career highlights in wrestling, whatever it is? Like, what helps you understand the mentality of why you're doing what you're doing? If I can pull that out of you, I can tell that story a lot easier, you know? So the wrestlers that really get the big picture are a lot easier to call for than the ones that are just, you know, bell to bell, I'm going to do my thing, and then that's all we need to know.
So maybe describe the emotion as opposed to call the moves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is. And again, a lot of times you can just feel the emotion. If there's a big high-risk move, if there is, you know, some breathtaking moment and you have the crowd chanting, this is awesome, or, you know, holy shit, or whatever they're doing, they're telling the story. There's nothing I can add. Oh, what a move. Like, there's nothing I can throw in there to make that better. But yeah, wrestling's always best when you're not just looking at it, but you're feeling it. And if I can help that in any way, I've done my job.
How does Joe Dombrowski go from being an announcer to a promoter?
that P word's dirty to me, man.
Okay.
I always prefer booker or a producer, director of operations, etc. Although I have promoted shows, but we were. God, how do I start? I was my first chance of doing office work was for 1PW in England. I was completely in over my head. I was 19 or 20 years old, and the promoter there had stumbled upon me because I'd made some contacts and got lucky. And he had never run a show. He'd never helped with a show. So I was using the 2 years of what I'd been able to pull from Norm and Kingdom and the other veterans and just try to do this, And I'm on the phone with Abyss and Samoa Joe and booking people, which is, was very awkward to me. But I got a chance to chip in with ideas for talent and stories and stuff like that. And thankfully, there was a whole committee there, and it was never left up to me because I would have been eaten alive by, all the big name talent that was over there. When we got back to, when the 1PW thing ended, I was over there for I did 4 trips there over the course of a year. I started doing TV for Cleveland All Pro Wrestling. And in Turner's Hall, where I'm running the shows out of now.
You started as an announcer there?
I started as an announcer there with Jamie Scott, and it was timing because I started coming up there in February, and by July they had semi-national television on the Indians TV home, Sports Time Ohio. So I did the announcing for about a year, and after that there was a rift between the management there and late great JT Lightning. I'm sure you know him well.
Sure, I used him a lot. Good guy.
He he had a very hard-nosed, my way or the highway mentality.
Absolutely.
And that worked for him, and I don't think it worked for necessarily the other office people that were up there. And there was inevitably a split. I don't know the details. I don't want to know the details. But JT went his way, and his partner went the other way, and the TV deal went with the partner. And me being the TV announcer, I had to go with TV, and it's, no knock on JT. We ended on amicable terms, but that's how PWO started, and Josh Prohibition was the first booker. And I started working under him because I had a lot of ideas for a lot of the young talent, Johnny Gargano and Gregory Iron and guys like that who had stories but didn't really have a chance to project them because JT's vision of the TV was very old school. And I thought, again, story, emotion, showcase the younger guys instead of... and this is not a knock on anybody because Tracy Smothers is one of my favorite people in the world. But when Tracy Smothers is doing a 45-minute promo, there's not a lot of time to tell Gregory Iron's story. Granted, I'd rather watch Tracy Smothers promo any day. But, we didn't have a budget. We didn't have an opportunity to really utilize those big-name talent anymore. So let's bring the rookies up and tell that story. And I helped a lot with the Gargano Iron story and a lot of the other stuff that was going on there. And as Josh became more of a family man and more of a he was getting more into his teaching job, kind of phasing himself out of the day-to-day with wrestling, then I kind of organically assumed that position, and I was the booker of record for the whole 6-year run we had up there. I'm very proud of. And again, it built from there. We had a great 6 years, and then a couple of years after that, I had an opportunity to start a new project up there with the Premier brand and later the Welterweight brand, and got a chance to get back in the seat and have a whole new crop of young talent to work with. And
I'm curious about welterweight. We'll get into that a little later on. But
sure.
As far as Premier, what are some of the things that you really enjoy about promoting and booking, and what are some of the things that you absolutely detest about those particular duties in wrestling?
Man, it goes both ways. The thing I hate most about promoting is just the weight on your shoulders and the pressure. Like if I'm booking something and a talent has to miss a show, or a talent gets hurt, or something happens where we can't get where we want to the way I'd planned, we can fix that. It might take some elbow grease, but we can fix it. I have a lot harder time fixing hey, the building we're running in is getting sold, or hey, the paperwork didn't show up at the commission office, or whatever the case was. Sponsors and flyers and all this other stuff where, all right, you can book a segment iffy instead of great and still have an okay show. You can't skimp on the big stuff, the business stuff. So that was hard. That was frustrating. And there was a point in the end of the PWO Prime run where literally everything was on my shoulders. And I was the promoter of record for at least a few shows. I was the booker of record. I was the money. I was doing all the nuts and bolts, and I burnt myself out. And that was, if there's ever a point where, while in the business, I hated being in the business, it was 2011, 2012, because it wore me down and it beat me up. And instead of waking up and thinking, what can I get done today? I woke up and thought, what can I push off till next week? And that's not a healthy mentality, no matter what you do. So I hated that. Booking wise, as well as promoting wise, like the best thing is just having something that was in your head come to fruition and come to reality and get a response from the fans. And again, that emotional reaction, and have the talent who maybe have not been put in an episodic story before or a 6 or 12 month story arc. It suddenly clicks and they get it and they understand why they've been on this road or why they've been doing something. And again, it's not just wrestling. It's the promo, it's the story, it's the video package. And just watching them grow and develop, it's very rewarding. And I take no credit for anybody's success. If anything, I position them and I gave them a little bit nudge forward, but it's up to them if they take the steps or not. And it's up to them if they pivot where they need to be. But just seeing that come together and seeing guys who a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I wouldn't have given a second look to, and now they're some of my favorite guys to work with. Seeing that progress and seeing the crowds go up and seeing, the buzz build, that's very rewarding. And of course, when you have a story that means a lot to you and you have to drop it because somebody leaves or somebody gets hurt or the crowd doesn't buy it, that can be very deflating and kind of difficult to work around. I always want to have, 3 things most bookers don't do in independent wrestling: a beginning, a middle, and an end. I always try to.
What are those?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I get so many ideas. What if we do this? And I'll be like, where do we go from there? And they got nothing. But yeah, when something blows up in your face, or here's a canceled show, or here's somebody's out 6 months, and we got to panic. I remember there was one event, one PWO taping, where I lost 2 or 3 guys to injury, 2 guys to a flu, and 1 guy was stuck in a blizzard. And I literally had a 4-way main event, and I called Gargano, and I was like, hey, Gargano, guess who else is in your match now? Nobody. It's just you. And, working around that's depressing.
Really, I find that interesting because for me, I ran shows in Altoona for 7 years, and although it was frustrating at times, I loved the challenge of sorting out when things went wrong. Like sometimes, if everything went too smoothly, I thought, boy, something's going to break here afterwards. But I really loved the challenge of fixing things in the moment. And
to an extent, I agree with you. But at that point, there was no fix because I had one main eventer.
No guys.
But it's one of those things where, in the heat of the moment, I had to do what I had to do to get through it. And you talk about enjoying the challenge. There have been times I've been driving or riding home from shows, and I'll think to myself, I'm in a good mood. Nothing went wrong, and this feels weird.
Sure.
I'm not ranting at anybody.
That's wrestling, though, right?
Right. I don't somebody's usually supposed to piss me off, but when something goes smoothly, it's like, did I miss something? Did I, So there's always something to kind of get tied up in a knot about. But at the end of the day, when I'm able to settle down and watch the finished product, it's almost always worth it.
We talked about it a little bit. I was going to save it for later, but you brought it up, the welterweight wrestling. I find it a curiosity. Now, I've seen a few of the guys on the roster. You have some extraordinary talent. I guess the concern that maybe some people would have is that, generally wrestling is known as the land of the dinosaurs, these great big guys. Obviously, you have faith in these guys, or you wouldn't be promoting this particular brand. Sure. Have there been any particular obstacles that you faced with having a roster of quite a few of the guys are somewhat young, and obviously their size is one thing. They can do things that a lot of other guys can't, but perception sometimes is reality. Have you faced any type of obstacle as far as that goes? Is it working? Is it drawing?
I think the biggest obstacle has just been the fact that we are trying to build the welterweight brand at the same time we're building the Premier brand, and they're treated as kind of sister entities to one another. We are in a historic building like Turner's Hall, but candidly, we are in not the best part of town. There was a lot of competition and saturation up in Cleveland. So is that market really thirsting for any kind of new brand? Not necessarily. With both Premier and Welterweight, I try to give them something that no one else up there is doing. No one else is really doing the episodic storytelling I try to do in Premier. Nobody's doing the niche marketing of the welterweights. And it's difficult because you're not going to be able to pitch welterweight to the mainstream and have a lot of excitement and buzz generated from that. That's going to be internet. That's going to be people that are fans of 205 Live, Cruiserweight Classic, WCW Cruiserweight Division, things of that nature. But to me, I look at the Cruiserweight Division in WWE, and there's no reason that a TJ Perkins or Mustafa Ali or anybody of that nature can't be competing with a Finn Balor or a Seth Rollins. Stylistically, size-wise, they're very similar. But you look at guys on the independents, and you can see guys like Jason Gorey and guys like Nate Wings and guys of that nature who are maybe a little bit smaller, 160, 150, sometimes less, sometimes more. And they're the ones that really aren't getting that look. And they're the ones that, okay, if you put them in a WWE locker room or an Impact locker room or Ring of Honor locker room, maybe they will stand out for not being as physically capable from a stature perspective as the other talents, and that may be hard to market them as equals. So let's give them their own platform and see what they can do, and let's give them a chance to not be the guy on the show that gets thrown around in match 3, and not be the guy that makes the Giant look good, but be the guys that can stand up and succeed or fail on their own. And is it drawing? Is it succeeding with any startup? The honest answer is yes and no. It's a wait and see type of thing. It's a thing where, the footage is going to be around, and I'm going to be pushing that for a long time. I'm still pushing Gargano matches. I will till I die. I'm proud of that, So it's still finding its identity. It's still finding its audience. Am I doing cartwheels and rolling in money right now? Absolutely not. But I see the long-term potential and viability, and the internet response has been strong. The YouTube numbers are strong, and I think there's a chance for for it to blow up and change the world, but for it to maybe be something that's a little bit ahead of its time in its presentation, and something that can have that niche audience. And if there's enough of a loyal support from that niche audience, it could grow from there, or it could continue to be kind of the side piece to Premiere. And I think that's something that the audience is going to determine a lot more than me. All I can do is do the best events possible and see how they're received. And the market will dictate if it works or fails.
You've been an announcer. Are you still working for Combat Zone, or is that something you're no longer associated with?
I had left Combat Zone in October. There was a little bit of a transitional period there with their venues and some of their booking staff. I'm very proud of my run there for whatever it was, 6 or 7 months. I got a chance to do the once in a lifetime Atsushi Onita show, which was a huge deal for them. Maybe their biggest show they ever did. I did Tournament of Death. You can still, if you're a fan of Blood and Violence, you can still hear my voice on the Wrestling's Bloodiest Wars monthly pay-per-view series. But again, me and DJ, separated on good terms. It was a situation where, he had some other priorities to take care of, and I had just started back with Ring of Honor, so my dates were starting to conflict anyway. So haven't been there lately, but we might get back together again, maybe next WrestleMania weekend when we're in the same town.
Let's talk about Ring of Honor.
Sure.
How did that come about for you?